How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, we are going to do a deep dive discussion on the Melodee Buzzard case. Where is she? How come mom won't tell us? Good thing is we do have mom right now locked up in the jail. She's facing felony charges for, what do we have? Imprisonment? What's it called, Russ? What am I looking at here?
False imprisonment.
False imprisonment. That's what I'm looking at. So it looks like hopefully at the jail, we may be able to get some information. She should be seen by mental health professionals. So maybe they can get her to talk a little bit, and maybe some of that privilege information could be shared, especially if we believe that the child is in danger. By the way, the picture on the right is the last known photograph of her. Not her last known appearance, but her last known photograph. And that picture looks to be a few years old. The last sighting of Melodee, they say, is on October 9th, but I do have a photo. I think this is from October 7th when they're at the car dealership trying to rent the car. And as you can see, Ashley, the mom, is got a nice little wig there. And they believe also Melodee is also wearing a wig. So we broke down this show into multiple, I think it's like 6 or 7 sections. Guys, there's a lot here. So what I'm going to do is I got a lot of notes to read. So I'm going to read that first. And then towards the end of each section, Russ is going to also answer some of the questions that we have that wrap up those sections. Then we're going to talk about her journey. As you can see here, Russ has put together a map from Google Map of the journey that has been explained to us through multiple media outlets. We're kind of leaning on resources for that, but Russ has been working on it, and we're going to kind of break down this trip. I have some notes for that, and then I'm going to give it over to Russ so he can kind of explain it. And then Russ, we also have one other thing. We're going to talk about the false imprisonment charge. We're going to talk about Taylor Brewer. Not a big fan, to be honest with you. And then me and Russ decided to kind of, discuss, if she's hiding, these could be the reasons why. If she's protecting her, these could be the reasons why. If she's dead, this could be the reason why. So there's a lot of stuff at the end that is just based on just our analysis. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to talk about before the crisis, a pattern of isolation and instability. But before we go into that, Russ, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I am also a former senior juvenile correctional officer. I currently work for a company where we do reentry and rehabilitation work with inmates at a local county jail and through a local county probation department. I am also the founder of Keepers of Chaos, which is dedicated to the brave men and women that serve in America's most hostile facilities. But not just the badged ones, but everyone that actually works in corrections, because no matter what, it is a demanding profession. Other than that, I am also the author of a brand new book that's out called Killing Complacency, Tactical Awareness for Correctional Professionals. And I think that's a book that really helps illustrate, what complacency looks like. Why it's so hideous, why it's so dangerous. And even though this is set within the correctional field, take it from me, this can apply to all kinds of different job sites and everything else. And it's something that I take a lot of pride in because I really went into a deep dive on it.
Yeah, and guys, my books as well, especially Manipulation and Coded, they have real application in the real world. Okay, so guys, don't forget, we do have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. The link to mine and Russ's is in the description. It's got to go further down. You'll see mine first. You see Russ underneath it. I also have mine on top of my YouTube channel. If you like it, please, if you like the video, the content we do, please don't hesitate and donate a cup of coffee. We're not monetized here on YouTube, so we don't say things like on a live or smurder. We give respect to the situation as it deems. All right, so part one, we want to talk about before the crisis, right? A pattern of isolation and instability. All right, so let me go ahead and get to the beginning of this. All right, so guys, we're going to talk a little bit before the disappearance of Melodee Buzzard, okay? So this is before the crisis. So the story of 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard's disappearance in October of 2025 cannot be understood without first examining the years of mounting pressures, mental health struggles, and progressive isolation that preceded it. What appears at first to be a sudden vanishing actually represents the culmination of a long deterioration in her mother's stability and systemic cutting off of the outside world from this vulnerable child. So let's talk about the early years and initial trauma. This is 2016 to 2020. Melodee was born in 2016 to Ashley Buzzard and Rolando Rubiel Pinoy Mesa. And this was in Santa Maria, California. I actually got a picture of the gentleman. There he is. That's him holding Melodee. Now, he soon died after her birth, about 6 months after, in a motorcycle accident. Her early life was marked by tragedy almost immediately. When Melodee was just 6 months old, her father was killed in a motorcycle accident. This left Ashley as Melodee's sole caretaker, a role she would guard with increasing jealousy and paranoia in the years to come. And I think this all plays out, guys. Just hear me out. In those years, Melodee's paternal grandmother, Lily Dinez, and other relatives from her father's side remained involved in the baby's life. But even then, family members noticed Ashley becoming more protective and possessive of Melodee, gradually limiting contact with the paternal relatives. What might have seemed like grief-driven behavior at the time would later be recognized as the beginning of a pattern of isolation. By 2017, Ashley's life showed signs of serious strain. Court records revealed she was sued over unpaid debts, including a December 2015 lawsuit for jewelry bought on credit. The financial pressure became so severe that she filed for Chapter 7 personal bankruptcy in 2017, ultimately accumulating approximately $23,000 in debt. Around the same period, relatives later revealed that Ashley underwent inpatient psychiatric treatment at least once, indicating struggles that went far beyond financial stress. Despite these challenges, Ashley maintained employment as an instructional assistant in the Santa Maria Bonita School District from 2016 to 2018, suggesting some degree of functioning during Melodee's toddler years. Now we have the breaking point and custody battle of 2021. The year 2021 marked a critical turning point. Ashley's mental health deteriorated to the point that she required hospitalization for several weeks. During this time, 5-year-old Melodee temporarily stayed with one of Lily Dinez's sons. Alarmed by what and Lily Dinez is the paternal grandparent of Melodee. So her son, which would be like her uncle, Melodee's uncle. Alarmed by what they had witnessed of Ashley's condition and behavior, the paternal family made a decisive move. Lily Dinez initiated adoption proceedings in an attempt to gain permanent custody of her granddaughter. Family members would later describe Ashley as mentally unstable during this period, with mental illness reportedly running in her family. After Ashley's release from psychiatric hospitalization, she successfully regained custody of Melodee. But rather than accepting help or maintaining family connections, Ashley responded by severing all contact between Melodee and her paternal relatives. This year marks 2021 marks approximately the last time Melodee's father's family had significant contact with the child. One aunt would later note she hadn't seen Melodee in about 4 years. Essentially, Melodee disappeared from their lives long before she disappeared from the world. The custody battle left deep scars on Ashley's psyche. She had nearly lost her daughter to the system, and to relatives she increasingly viewed with suspicion. This experience would fuel a paranoia that only intensified over the following years, ultimately contributing to the desperate actions she would take in 2025. Now we got progressive isolation and unmonitored homeschooling, and this is between 2022 and 2024. Following the custody dispute, Ashley made a series of decisions that systematically removed Melodee from public view and outside oversight. Instead of rolling Melodee in elementary school with her peers, Ashley claimed to be schooling her. However, critically, no official homeschool affidavit was ever filed with the state, a required step in California. This meant that from kindergarten age onward, Melodee was being educated at home with absolutely no outside oversight for at least a couple of years leading up to 2025. The implications of this cannot be overstated. Melodee had minimal interaction with teachers, doctors, or other mandated reporters, the very people who might notice signs of abuse, neglect, or a deteriorating home situation. The paternal family remained cut off. Extended family saw Melodee rarely or not at all during this time. And by late 2023, the most recent photograph of Melodee available publicly was already old, underscoring just how sheltered she had become. And I think they're talking about this picture on the right. For a child in modern America to be this invisible to institutions and community requires deliberate effort. This isolation served multiple purposes from Ashley's perspective. It protected her from scrutiny about her parenting and mental health. It prevented the paternal family from gaining any footholds for another custody challenge. And perhaps most significantly, it allowed Ashley's reality, increasingly divorced from consensus reality, to be the only reality Melodee knew. Now you have the mounting financial and legal pressures. By late of 2024, Ashley's post-bankruptcy finances had again deteriorated. Debt collectors filed multiple lawsuits seeking to recover a few $1,000s in credit card debt. One suit in November 2024 was for approximately $2,659, and another in December 2024 for approximately $2,778. More tellingly, process servers struggled to even find Ashley to serve court papers. In one November of 2024 attempt, a neighbor reported that Ashley's house in Mars Avenue had been vacant for 3 months, raising questions about whether Ashley and Melodee were deliberately avoiding contact or living a transient existence even before the October disappearance. This period of apparent seclusion is a warning sign. A mother and daughter essentially unseen by neighbors for months, with no school attendance to account for the child's welfare, represents exactly the kind of situation child welfare systems are designed to prevent, yet Melodee remained off everyone's radar until the events of 2025 forced her case into the light. The combination of factors by late 2024 painted a concerning picture. A mother with documented mental health issues, under financial strain, increasingly paranoid and isolated, with complete control over a child no outside institution was monitoring. All the ingredients for tragedy were present. The question was not whether something would happen, but when, and whether anyone would notice in time. Okay, that's the first section, Russ. This is the question I would love for us to explore for the first section. How might earlier intervention have changed this trajectory? The signs were present: psychiatric hospitalization, custody disputes, financial instability, and progressive isolation of a child. What systemic gaps allowed Melodee to fall through the cracks for years before her disappearance?
Well, I think that, the main thing that you'll see is first of all, once again, we're talking about California here. If I harken back to the Harrow case, I think that for those of you not familiar with it, the man, beat his daughter nearly to death, left her, I think, deaf, blind, and partially paralyzed, and did 120 days in jail for it. And then later on, he beat his son to death, and that's been adjudicated in a court. So we can say that without having to use those nasty alleged words. So we start right from the beginning that, California is not well equipped to, do anything that's preventative anyway. If we take and move beyond that, it's hard to say, who might have been calling in, who might have been talking to, welfare services or child protective services. So I don't know that there's, necessarily that something that could have been done. But the idea that she was out of that house and we don't know where she was bodes ill. You think that probably the only way that that's possible is if, she was couch surfing from place to place and or partially transient, just kind of, hitting the streets, hitting a couch here and there. And then that draws into question, just how much danger that little girl was in. Because in all of these situations where you have this couch surfing, you have, transients and vagrants and homeless, whatever you want to call them, then you have, loads and loads of, controlled substance issues. And that particular, population subset also tends to be rife with, sexual predators and all kinds of other things that do really call into question the safety of the little girl. So as we get past this, she's already in a really unsafe place. I think what kind of starts to become apparent is there's a component of this that really is, the mental illness aspect. And I think that this is just a situation where she's just waiting, not consciously, but she's just waiting for something to trigger her into action, that she does something drastic.
Yes, and I want to mention something. Let me just get myself back in here. I want to mention something. After reading this, so I did a show earlier today, and kind of reviewing some things. I'm starting to see this pattern of where she may want to either protect her child from being taken away from her, or have control. And there's two different end games to that, which me and Russ will dive into a lot later, but may not be a good outcome. So again, when I think that she may be in fear, if you look at the context of this all, and plus when she was younger, her mother was kind of on the run with her because of either, I think it was an abusive husband or abusive boyfriend, whatever it is. But the father of Melodee, I believe, was abusive. So the mother was on the run. So a little similar maybe. And maybe, I don't know if this is starting up again with her, but I think you have involvement from, maybe she's afraid of Child Protective Services, law enforcement, maybe, the paternal family trying to get custody, that she doesn't want that. So the concern is, how is she going to react to that pressure? Is she going to hide the child, so nobody could get to the child? Maybe in her mind, that could be some level of protection. Or will she take the ultimate control and just take the child out so nobody can have her? And we're going to discuss that. But to me, that's the scarier thought. All right, so let's get to the second part. All right, so we want to talk now about the final approach. This is August to early October of 2025. So this is the puzzling school enrollment, which happened August of 2025. So after years of keeping Melodee isolated and allegedly homeschooling her without proper documentation, Ashley made a surprising move in August of 2025. With the new school year approaching, she visited Mission Valley Independent School to enroll 9-year-old Melodee in the Lompoc Unified School District's Independent Study Program. That's homeschooling. This program would allow Melodee to study from home, but under district supervision, a compromise between isolation and full school attendance. This enrollment meeting, where Melodee was present with her mother, would become critically important in retrospect. It was the last confirmed in-person sighting of Melodee by an official or outside party prior to her disappearance. District officials later noted that Melodee had been homeschooled for at least the last few years before this enrollment. Why would Ashley, after years of avoiding oversight, suddenly invite it? Several interpretations are possible. Perhaps she genuinely wanted Melodee to receive better education, but couldn't face full school attendance. Perhaps financial pressures made the free curriculum material appealing. Or perhaps, as some investigators suspect, this was a calculated move to create a veneer of normalcy while she planned what would come next, a way to appear compliant while buying time. Now, the failure to engage in escalating concern. Now we're going to September of 2025. After enrollment, Melodee never actually participated in the independent study program. According to the school district, she failed to pick up her assigned coursework or attend any orientation. This immediately triggered the district's truancy and welfare protocols. Throughout September, school staff made multiple attempts to contact the Buzzards through phone calls, email letters, and even a home visit. These efforts were met with complete silence. Ashley neither responded nor presented Melodee to confirm her well-being. For school administrators, this pattern was deeply troubling. A child enrolls, appears briefly, then vanishes without explanation despite repeated outreach. The lack of any attendance by Melodee several weeks into the term was a major red flag that something was seriously wrong. Now the system closes in. This is early of October 2025. By early October, with still no signs of Melodee and the family remaining non-responsive, the situation reached a critical threshold. Per Lompoc Unified Policy, when a student doesn't attend after all outreach efforts have been exhausted, the school requests a welfare check by law enforcement. In the first days of October, school officials were preparing to involve authorities due to Melodee's extended absence and the family's troubling silence. I want to mention a little side note. It's funny how extended absence or prolonged absence, or on the back end of what they considered an exhausted effort. Well, how long does it take for an exhausted effort? What is an exhausted effort? Why did it take this long? So it's precisely this juncture, as the school district and possibly Child Protective Services were about to descend, that Ashley's behavior shifted from evasive to desperate. The walls were closing in. The isolation she had so carefully maintained was about to be breached by mandated reporters and officials with legal authority to check on Melodee's welfare. What happened next would transform this from a truancy and welfare concern into one of the most troubling missing child cases in recent California history. So, Russ, the timing of Ashley's subsequent actions, immediately preceding official intervention, suggests awareness that her control over Melodee was about to end. Was the October trip a premeditated response to this pressure, or a panic flight as events overtook her? That's a great question.
I kind of have a different read on that, and this is just based on trying to figure out. We had a long period of years with her not being under any type of accountability. A number of years where from her point of view, things could have kind of just been going fine because there was nothing upsetting the cart. I think that it's possible that somewhere along the way, though, she may have been offered some help. And I think that help might have come in the form of getting back on some sort of true regimen with regard to her medication. And I think that that would explain a lot of the things that we see happening. If she gets on her medication, for instance, she ends up with improved reality testing. Her paranoia decreases. She has better executive function. She can make better choices. Hey, I would like to put my daughter into school, and so this is the point at which maybe she's starting to stabilize. Maybe she's starting to normalize. Now, again, this is some speculation. But when I tried to think it through from beginning to end, why do we see what is a market improvement? And then that market improvement suddenly gives way to complete decompensation. So that's explainable too, if she did get back on her medication and she did start to get better, because she could have got to a point where she decided that those medications are no longer suiting her. They're cutting her back from some ways that she's feeling and stuff. This is pretty common with psychological medications. And then she decided to go off of them, and she got worse than she's ever been. Much, much worse than she's ever been. And I just believe that that is a possible explanation. It was the best one that I could come up with. To me, it seems better than just saying, oh, she was trying to trick the system, because she had never done anything to trick the system up to that point that we really saw. She had been, completely detached and unplugged from what was going on, maybe not necessarily in her daughter's life, but in her daughter's interest and welfare. And so all of a sudden, she starts getting interested in putting her daughter back in school, and she seems like she's functioning on a higher level. Well, that kind of ticks off, all of the things that are supposed to happen when a person's medication gets stabilized, and just, improved reality testing, decreased paranoia, better executive function, reduced isolation drive. Those are it.
Yeah, and by the way, Russ, I agree with you 100%. Obviously, working in a correctional facility, you deal with a lot of people that have mental health, and the big thing here about them is that when they're prescribed medication, sometimes you have to mandate it, because a lot of them are not self-aware, and the moment that are self-aware of how sick they are, and the moment you take the medication, or you trust them to take it on their own, they may not, because they really may not understand how fully sick they are. Now, when I try to look at this and interpret what's happening, it's tough, because we don't know how Ashley sees the world. We don't know what her concerns may actually be that's motivating this behavior. Now, I do like the perspectives that was given here, but I think that when she put the kid into the school system, this is just a guess for me, she may have realized that, oh my God, there's going to be all eyes on this child. It's going to come back to the house at some point. I think I just messed up. I think I made a mistake. And I think that eventually she tries to, maybe just not have the kids show up. But I think she's also smart enough to know that once the kid stops showing up, eventually they're going to try to find out where that kid is, because that's the job of the oversight board. And then on top of that, you also have the pressure of the family still wanting that child, still wanting to adopt the child. So I figure that she does not want to lose that child. But my biggest concern here is, and we'll get to it later, but we did break it down. I just want to kind of put it out there just a little bit now, but not go deep yet, is that her fear, and this is my thing, if she has a fear of not wanting to lose that child, that could be a very scary thing, because one is she'll try to hide the child in her mind to protect the child. But if she feels at any point that things are getting too close and there's a chance that she could lose the child to something else, she may feel that the best way to protect that child is to kill the child. And I know that sounds morbid, but would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah. So when I look at the part where I said, it's possible that she's, decompensating at that point, and it certainly appears, because right when she's on the verge of, getting ready to go, and she's fleeing from, whatever she perceives as a threat, real or imagined, but my view is that it's, all imagination at this point, is that, she ends up, doing this thing where she's dressing herself in wigs. She's dressing, her daughter in wigs. So they have these disguises. And then, all of these things with, there's some paranoid accusations about some things. She at some point, restrains this brewer guy, locks him in the house, apparently threatens him with a box cutter. And, that's just kind of, a huge indication that she is spiraling out of control. And then you have to wonder where that spiral ends. And that spiral, of course, takes a, partial cross-country trip where almost none of her time and none of her actions are accounted for, except in some very sparse areas.
Yeah. And guys, this is why one of the questions that has to be asked is, we want to know where Melodee is, but in the meantime, we need to ask ourselves, or ask, whoever's in charge of this investigation, how does Ashley see the world? Because that really matters into motive and, her mindset and what she could have done with Melodee. But with that said, there is still a time frame, because, now you have to be very careful. Once you know how she sees the world, if she feels that she's being pressured and you back her into a corner, you could put the child at risk. And I think, and we'll get to it later, I think Brewer could have done that a little bit, and we'll get to that. But again, this is the reason why this is a scary moment for me, is that I don't know how Melodee sees what's happening to her. I mean, sorry, Melodee. I don't know how Ashley sees what's happening to her. And because I don't know, what could have happened to Melodee could be anything at this point. But I truly think it's something to do with, if you look at the background of this story, it's something to do with the pressure of losing that child. I think there's something involved with that. The pressure of losing that child, the pressure of going into that home, and maybe she knows she's sick. Maybe she has a feeling one day she's going to go to a psychiatric hospital and never come out. And at that point, if that's the case, maybe she wants to choose where that child goes, and not the government or not some child protective services. Maybe for some reason she doesn't want the child going to the paternal side. So she knows, you know what? I'm sick. I'm falling apart. I can't control it. Eventually, I'm probably going to go into a mental health institution and never come back, or they're just going to deem me that I can't have guardianship of my child. So in an effort to make sure my child's safe, I'm going to go ahead and put this child with a family that I do trust, and then I can go ahead and deal with my own mental health concerns, knowing that my child is in safe hands. So like, she could be decompensating, but she may be aware enough maybe to know that in the long run, she's going to lose the child. So what can I do now to protect the child? Maybe. Now, this is where We're going to definitely lead into a big portion with Russ here. This is where it gets a little complicated for me, but it's why I have Russ. So let me just read this off, and then Russ is going to take control. He's going to bring out the Google Maps. I do have one video I want to show too in this before we do the Google Maps. It's 8 seconds, this video. So let's talk about the journey between October 7th and the 10th of 2025. So let's talk about day one, the departure in disguise, October 7th of 2025. So this is how they both look. They were in disguise. Melodee's in the back. Ashley's up in the front. Looks like they got some wigs on. Now, mind you, this picture is one of the most recent pictures we have of her within these last couple of days. I know there's a recent sighting of her, but I don't have a picture of her. But with that said, she looks a little bit taller. She should be about 9 years old, we believe. All right, let me read this part. All right, so on Tuesday, October 7, 2025, Ashley Buzzard made her move. She rented a white 2024 Chevrolet Malibu bearing California license plate 9MNG101 from a local agency in Lompoc. Surveillance footage from the rental facility captured a scene that, in hindsight, appears chilling. Both Ashley and Melodee were wearing wigs as they picked up the vehicle. Hey, guys, look at this video real quick. Let me show you this. I'm going to let it run a couple of times. Both look calm.
Now the frantic search.
Don't need that. Let me see. All right. Now let me get myself back. All right. So now this footage represents the last verified sighting of Melodee at the beginning of the journey and establishes crucial visual evidence that mother and daughter were together when they left. But the wigs tell us something more. The use of disguises at this very early stage, before even leaving their home city, suggests premeditation rather than spontaneous decision-making. Both were disguised before departing, indicating advanced planning and a clear awareness that their movements might be tracked or identified. After securing the rental, Ashley drove east with Melodee, beginning what would become a 3-day cross-country journey that would cover multiple states and over 1,000 miles. The destination appeared to be Nebraska, though the purpose of traveling to that distant state remains unclear. Day 2, the license plate swap and push eastward. This is October 8th, 2025. By October 8th, Ashley and Melodee had traveled deep into the interior states, likely following major interstate corridors through Nevada, Utah, and Colorado toward Nebraska. At some point during this day, Ashley made a move that transformed the trip from merely suspicious to overtly criminal. She removed the rental car's California license plates and replaced it with a New York plate bearing the number HCG9677. This plate did not belong to the rental vehicle and was not registered to Ashley Buzzard. The swap was either accomplished with the stolen plate or one illegally obtained specifically for this purpose. The act demonstrates several critical points about Ashley's mindset: clear criminal intent to deceive law enforcement, advanced planning. She either brought the New York plates with her or obtained it early in the trip, and sophisticated understanding of vehicle tracking methods and automated license plate readers. The pair reached Nebraska during this phase, marking the furthest eastern point of their journey. What occurred in Nebraska remains one of the central mysteries of this case. Was it always the intended destination? Did they meet someone there? What purpose did this remote location serve in whatever plan Ashley had formed? Maybe it wasn't the drop-off. Maybe they went further out, and the drop-off was before that. The journey to Nebraska and the elaborate measure taken to avoid detection suggest this was no impulsive flight. This was a carefully orchestrated operation by a woman who understood she needed to move undetected across state lines. Now, day 3, the return route and last sighting. This is October 9, 2025. On October 9th, Ashley and Melodee began their return journey toward California. Rather than retracing their outbound route, they took a circuitous, Russ? What's the word there? Circuitous pass that would take them through Kansas and then southwest through some of the most remote terrain in the American West. On this day, a surveillance camera near the Colorado-Utah border captured the rented Malibu passing through the area. This footage represents the last confirmed sighting of Melodee Buzzard alive. The timestamp, never mind. So she was alive on the return trip. The timestamp on this surveillance establishes a critical fact. Whatever happened to Melodee occurred sometime after this sighting and before Ashley's solo return to Lompoc the following day. So I apologize about before what I said about Nebraska. This is actually correct. Then that's the last known sighting. So it looks like as they're turning around. So you got Green River, Utah. That's a remote town along Interstate 70 in eastern Utah, where the vehicle was spotted during the westbound leg. The area is characterized by vast desert wilderness with limited population. Then you have Penguin, Utah, a small town of approximately 1,600 people in southern Utah, indicating the travelers diverted off main interstates to travel through rural routes. The town sits near Bryce Canyon National Park along Highway 89, which is an isolated scenic corridor. Then you have northwest Arizona. The route apparently passed through this sparsely populated region, likely via Interstate 15, which includes some of the most remote terrain in the state. Then you have Prim, Nevada, a small border community with casino resorts that serve as a final stop before entering California along Interstate 15. And then you got Rancho Cucamonga, California, a city in Southern California's inland empire, marking their approach back into California proper before heading north along the coast towards Lompoc. So this return route is notable for being significantly longer and more circuitous than any direct path. Rather than taking 180 or I-80 or even I-70 straight across Nevada to California, actually loop through Kansas and then southwest through Utah, possibly through Arizona and through Nevada. This routing raises troubling possibilities. Was she avoiding detection by taking less traveled routes? Was she accessing remote locations for a specific purpose? The route passes through some of the most isolated terrain in the American West, areas that provide opportunities that urban corridors do not. During this return journey, investigators noted that Ashley changed her appearance again, swapping to a darker wig that more closely matched the style Melodee had been seen wearing. This ongoing effort to alter her appearance throughout this trip demonstrates sustained awareness of the need to avoid recognition. And at least one more witness, a gas station employee in Junction, Utah, later reported to the FBI that she believed Ashley had stopped there and saw a woman with a purple wig in the car, though the employee said it looked like an adult, not a child. The ambiguous sighting raises questions about Melodee's condition and visibility during the return journey. Was Melodee still in the vehicle but heavily disguised, or was this another person entirely? That interaction had something to do with Ashley also mentioning something about cats being outside of this store or gas station. So, Russ, this is where you're going to dive deep, Russ, but the choice of the specific return route, remote, time-consuming, and passing through vast, unpopulated areas is one of the most troubling aspects of the entire case. What compelled Ashley to take this particular path? The region she traveled through on October 9th include countless locations where someone could conceal evidence or a person without immediate discovery. Okay, Russ, you need me to put the map up?
Yeah, go ahead and put the map up.
Here it is.
So as near as I could tell from what was on there, this was their route, and you can see that it starts in Southern California and it just goes all the way up and just barely gets up into Colorado, as far as I can tell. Does that make sense with what you've heard, Anthony? Hello?
I was muted. Yeah, I apologize. Okay, say that again, Russ.
So does this jive with what you've seen?
Repeat.
As far as their final route?
Yeah, repeat the beginning again, though, please.
So it starts with Southern California. It comes from up in Santa Barbara County down through Los Angeles, and then all the way back up through Vegas, and then the rest of it here ends up just barely inside Colorado. Now, you had mentioned before that it came all the way back down to Rancho Cucamonga.
Yeah, on the return trip.
As you can see, Rancho Cucamonga is right there. It's just north of Long Beach.
Right. So, Russ, you're talking about the return. You're talking about the return route now, right?
Yeah, but I want to talk about the Grand Junction sighting. Okay.
Right. So just for clarity, Russ. So just for clarity, because again, this is where it gets confused. So the first trip up, she went straight to Nebraska, and then she turns around through Kansas and starts going back, eventually towards which will eventually be Rancho Cucamonga and then Cali. So right now, what you're showing us is the trip back, correct?
Hold on.
Sorry, guys, we learn at the same time you do. Yeah, you want me to give you the beginning route again, or you got it?
No. Let me come back onto my. Let me come back onto this. So, I may have. Okay, so the whole thing about Nebraska was never ever corroborated, and that's why I didn't include it on this. Is she said she was going there, but as far as we know from what law enforcement said is they didn't ping a phone that they knew her to have there, and so she didn't go anywhere else as far as we know except this exact route that I picked out.
Okay.
And so as far as I know, this was the route out there and this was the route back.
Okay.
And the reason that I wanted to focus on Grand Junction and what happened here is because the gas station attendant said she saw a woman with purple hair, and we already know that that she had dressed the girl up before with a wig and so forth. You can't tell the stature very well of someone in a car. So I believe that was actually the very last sighting right there, and just going by that, because there was no other time that we heard about anyone else being with them ever at all. And I would think, and of course there's a couple different ways to look at this, but I think that when you have paranoid delusions, it's very hard to open up trust to anyone. Although we will talk about one specific situation that could have come about because of that.
Hey, Russ, and you are really good, man. You gave me a wake-up call, because it even says here, there's no publicly released verified surveillance or travel record evidence that definitively states that they entered Nebraska. While the route is described as very expansive, California, possibly Nebraska to Kansas, then back, the sheriff's office wording, believed to have traveled as far as Nebraska, leaves it as strong suspicion rather than confirmed act. The last confirmed sighting of Melodee is on October 9th in the region between the Colorado-Utah border. So it wasn't publicly confirmed with certainty that she reached Nebraska. The investigation note suggests it's believed or suspected they traveled as far as Nebraska, but a confirmed entry or documented stop in Nebraska has not been publicly disclosed. Thank you for that, Russ, because that's a wake-up call for a lot of us who believe that was a stop. So that's you and your due diligence. I appreciate you, man. That's a good find.
So that's what I have on it. That's what my belief is, and I kind of like I go with that gut feeling that that's what was going on there. She walked into the gas station and said, "Hey, there's some cats out here," or "There's a cat with kittens out here," and then immediately walked back out. And that's when that person saw this purple-haired female, ostensibly in that car. And I believe that was the last known sighting.
Oh, so you believe the purple-haired female could be Melodee?
I absolutely do, because the gas station attendant said that the person was in the car. Now, she might have been able to see more on the stature and how short she was. She was relatively short, but in the car, it's difficult to tell. You've potentially got, automobile glass between you and the individual and whatever. And there was never any other indication when they went back and when she went back and turned the car in, that anyone else had been with them. I would assume that vehicle has been gone over with a fine-tooth comb by now. And, they have no reason why they have to release anything to the public, of course. But I just think that if they knew of someone else that might have been in there, they might have tipped the public up to that so that people would be on the lookout for a third party, perhaps. I don't think they have that indication. And so I think that that's the last sighting, is the purple-haired female at that gas station in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Yeah, and by the way, they don't ask, like, how old do you think the person looked? They just said it could have been an adult. So that could be someone that could be, 18. So, and maybe the mother made up the girl a little bit, put some makeup on her, if they were in disguise. I mean, Is it possible? I mean, this picture is 2 years old. This is when she was 7, but I mean, this picture of her, I mean, that's hard to see really, but if you look at the video, I mean, could someone believe that she was an adult? I think a good question would have been to ask that person, how old do you think the person was that was in the front seat of that car who had the purple hair?
Well,
that would
yeah,
have been
and you know that non-natural colors being used as in a wig, or even with regards to some makeup and stuff, makes age a whole lot harder to determine. It becomes kind of a little bit more ambiguous, if you will. So, you know, that's just a little bit more of the disguise and so forth that was going on, in my opinion.
So then if you look at it this way, then the drop off would look like it would be on her return back, unless she never went that far out to begin with, or she was trying to find somebody along the way to pass the girl off to.
Well, I unfortunately, and I mean, I don't like to, be the bearer of bad news, or, try and be, not optimistic. I certainly hope that she's found alive. But I think that this woman, in the midst of decompensating like that, I think that, she completely, wandered off of reality, and that something happened along the way there. Although, female annihilators are fairly rare. It's not unheard of. And I think that, she could have been under a delusion that she was protecting the child from future harm. And the reason that I think along those lines is there's nothing to indicate that she had contact with anyone along the way in this whole area. There's nothing that proves it. And then we come to that last sighting, and then that's about it. So, and the only other thing that I can think of is, she might have become familiar with someone who she put trust in, and that trust was not well placed. And that individual, she may have left the girl with him, her, or they, whatever we want to say that's about. And then that might have been a bad idea, because someone could have been intentionally preying on her to try and separate the two to begin with. And she's obviously, not in the best mental state to be able to identify that might be happening. So that's actually a really horrible scenario that also is maybe the best case scenario. But, we're just kind of spitballing this thing. And I don't think she's trusting anybody at that point, though. It doesn't appear that she, was in contact with anyone other than her daughter. And I think that is a really bad sign. I think that means that she ended up, having a complete break with reality, and probably something bad happened shortly thereafter.
So it's funny, because me and you kind of are looking at the same thing, but we see two different outcomes, but they're both relevant. Like, I mean, I could see the pressures of this situation of her possibly losing the child, decompensating, all this stuff, and then her wanting to protect the child. But then again, how do you define protect? That seems to be a unique word in this situation. What's the end result of a mother who is decompensating that wants to protect her child? Because protecting a child could be a finality. It could be, I'm never going to have you picked up by this family, so this is the best thing I can do. But so I also have to ask, is this route a planned route, or was this route a woman in panic who just decided she'd figure it out along the way and was just kind of going a little bit all over the place until she got what she wanted? Or was this something more deliberate, planned out, where she had an end game and this is what it is? And we don't know that. It's hard to know what this travel was about when we don't know what she's running from, don't know her state of mind, and don't know if this was a planned route or if this was something she just decided to up and do because she felt being pressured. So of course you're looking at what contacts does she have out there? Who does she know out there? I mean, did she meet someone on the internet? I mean, is there something that the police have in some level of digital evidence that can showcase who she was connected to in some of these areas here? But as you said, Russ, if she was decompensating, I mean, could this still be a planned route if she's mentally decompensating?
So her natural default setting appears to be where she isolates herself. And that's probably a really bad sign, because that means that she doesn't have anybody that she can go to. She doesn't have anyone that she can give the girl to. Look at how long that they might have been, living homeless, and they don't have any indicators of her having much contact with any homeless communities, which is typically what you see. I deal with, homeless participants of mine all the time, and they always know such and such and this person, and they've seen someone. And if I want to find someone, I just ask one of them, and I can find them in a hurry. And this doesn't seem to be that. She had a house, doesn't appear she was using it. That appears like, she was like, her natural inclination is to isolate.
Yeah, you know what, Russ, I agree. You know what? So sometimes when we look at something, we look at it, and maybe this could be someone that was acting sporadic and impulsively. Maybe there really wasn't a plan, or maybe there was. We don't know. But she could have also came back to her house to finish the last part of whatever she wanted to do, which could have been being prepared to check into a mental health institution, or I'm just spitballing here too, or sadly maybe taking her own life. I mean, we don't know what her mindset was like, but we know maybe this too, Russ. What about there's a different perspective? Maybe for some reason she wanted to separate herself from her daughter. Maybe it wasn't.
I would think about that, but that's putting her closer in proximity in a car over miles and miles and miles. I just don't know. I think that there was a very organized delusion there, and that delusion, encompassed, having to be on the run. Maybe it was from her family, or maybe it was from the school. Maybe she said, she started having a delusion about the school. She felt pressured. She left. She certainly thought she was being followed. I don't know who she thinks is following her, because she changed out license plates. I think that means that the delusion is really deep. It's really hooked in. It's really, really real to her too. And because it's really real to her, she's acting this out. And who knows, maybe I don't know that the route or anything necessarily matters, but maybe she's, acting out, or I should say reacting out, what happened to her when she was with her mother and they were homeless for a while. And maybe that's her driving thing, which just means she's decompensating even more. So,
yeah. And guys, as we get to later, she's willing to kill for that secret, because when she felt she disclosed it to that guy Brewer, she took out a box cutter. All right, let's go to this day 4. So on Friday, October 10th, so it's 7, 8, 9. Yeah, on Friday, October 10th, Ashley Buzzard arrived back in Lompoc and returned the rental vehicle to the agency. The California license plates had been reinstalled, the New York plates removed, an attempt to cover her tracks. But the most significant detail was impossible to hide. Ashley was alone. 9-year-old Melodee was not with her mother. Ashley provided no explanation for her daughter's absence to anyone. She simply came home without her child and resumed living in her residence as if nothing had happened. In the days immediately following, she would even remove missing person flyers of Melodee from her property when neighbors and families began posting them. The rental car itself would become evidence. When investigators eventually obtained it, they conducted a forensic examination looking for any signs of violence or struggle. Sections of Ashley's home were also examined, with authorities removing drywall, carpeting, and even concrete for testing. To date, no definitive physical evidence of violence has been publicly disclosed through the though the investigation continues. And by the way, side note, when they did the Emmanuel Harrow case, they found evidence. That's why they were able to arrest them immediately, I think on August 22nd, because there was enough evidence in the house to showcase there was foul play. There wasn't no evidence in this house. That's why they couldn't make the arrest, at least at that time, for anything related to child abuse or something. Within days of her return, as school officials realized, Melodee still hadn't appeared and couldn't be reached. The machinery of official investigation would finally engage. But by then, whatever had happened to Melodee had already occurred, and Ashley Buzzard had begun a silence she would maintain for over a month. So now this gets us into the missing person report, because the school finally sends out the prolonged absence on October 14th. This is already 4 days after the trip had ended. So a week, right? If the trip went out around October 7th, this is October 14th. It's almost a week later. After the long Columbus Day weekend, school officials made the formal request. Lompoc, Tuesday. It would be. She went to the rental car place on a Tuesday. Then you had Columbus Day that following week, that Tuesday. Lompoc Unified Administrator, unable to reach the family and noting Melodee had never shown up for independent study appointments, notified the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday, October 14th, of the child's prolonged absence. That same day, sheriff deputies went to the Buzzard residence in the 500 block of Mars Avenue to conduct a welfare check. They found Ashley at home, but no sign of Melodee. When questioned about her daughter's whereabouts, Ashley refused to provide any credible accounts. According to the sheriff's report, no verifiable explanation for her whereabouts was provided. She was described as uncooperative, offering nothing that would help locate the missing 9-year-old. This refusal to account for her child's location immediately elevated the situation. Law enforcement launched a full missing child investigation that day, with the FBI soon joining. Given Melodee's young age, the mysterious circumstances of the cross-country trip, and Ashley's stonewalling, authorities they quickly classified Melodee as an at-risk missing person. Detectives began urgently retracing Ashley's steps, reviewing surveillance footage, and interviewing anyone who might provide information. On October 16th, investigators executed a search warrant at Ashley's home. While they collected potential evidence, including the drywall, carpet, and concrete sections mentioned earlier, there was still no sign of Melodee at the house or any definitive evidence of what had happened to her. Santa Barbara County Child Welfare Services also became involved, making repeated visits to Ashley's door. Her continued refusal to cooperate, answer questions, or provide any reassurance about Melodee's safety grew more ominous with each passing day. Melodee extended family grew increasingly vocal. Her paternal relatives, the very people Ashley had cut off years earlier, began holding vigils and pleading through the media for any information. They described their year-long estrangement from Melodee and expressed the fears that they had harbored about Ashley's mental state and Melodee's isolation. Now, this is where we're going to see this guy come in, Tyler Brewer, and the false imprisonment incident. So I'm going to go over this real quick. I do got a question for you, and then I want to show you Facebook and what everybody's thinking of Tyler Brewer. I'm not going to rehash it because I covered this in a show I did before, but I'm not a big fan of this guy, just saying. But here we go. Tyler Brewer and the false imprisonment incident. A breakthrough of sorts came through Tyler S. Brewer, a paralegal and licensed legal document assistant who had known Ashley through mutual friends since 2014. So that's an update. I didn't have that before. When the case hit the news in mid-October, Brewer grew concerned and began checking on Ashley's well-being. On November 6, 2025, he visited her home in Lompoc to offer help with the search for Melodee. What happened during this visit would lead to Ashley's arrest and provide investigators with potentially crucial, though troubling, information about Melodee's fate. According to Brewer's account, during the visit, Ashley became agitated and visibly distressed after saying something about Melodee that she apparently regretted sharing. She then produced a box cutter and locked multiple deadbolts on her door, effectively holding Brewer captive in the house. Brewer reported that Ashley kept shutting her eyes and clenching her fist in a disoriented manner as she blocked the exit. He repeatedly asked to leave, but Ashley refused to unlock the door. Brewer was finally allowed to exit, but only after Ashley slammed the door and engaged 4 separate locks behind him, a demonstration of the extent of her paranoia about securing the premises. Once free, Brewer immediately contacted law enforcement to report both the false imprisonment and all concerning communication and inconsistencies Ashley had disclosed during the encounter. Most significantly, during the incident, Ashley had allegedly revealed to Brewer where Melodee was and with whom she had left her before panicking and attempting to retract the information. Brewer told News Nation's Banfield program that Ashley confided she dropped Melodee off with a specific person at a particular location, implying the 9-year-old was left somewhere in Utah with someone Ashley trusted. However, Brewer himself has openly questioned the veracity of Ashley's claim, given how irrational and paranoid she was acting at the time. He noted that Ashley seemed like a completely different person from the friend he knew years ago, citing her severe mental health issues and extreme paranoia. In his own words, he said he worried for her well-being and cannot be certain if what she told him about Melodee's whereabouts is true or a delusion. Brewer report led to Ashley's arrest on November 8, 2025. There's pictures of that there. At her home, she was booked at the Santa Barbara County Northern Branch Jail in Santa Maria on a felony charge of false imprisonment. The Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office noted in charging documents that the way the alleged crime was carried out indicated planning, sophistication, or professionalism, and bail was set at $100,000. I want to show you one thing real quick. This is a quick video of the arrest. Let me just show you guys this real quick. Russ, can you see the video?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to play it now.
The mother of missing Melodee Buzzard is behind bars. She's arrested roughly a month after the little girl from the Central Coast just vanished. Her mysterious disappearance now being followed by people all across the country. But as CBS LA's Hunter Sowers shows us, the charge is not directly related to her daughter's disappearance, right?
Pat, just another twist in this strange case here. She is being charged, though, with felony false imprisonment. The Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office saying that Ashley, Melodee's mom, held a victim against their will, but will not tell us anything else about who, when, or where it may have happened. And while we still don't know where Melodee is tonight, her family has hope they will finally get some answers.
The frantic search for 9-year-old Melodee intensifies as her mother is handcuffed outside of her home Friday morning on an unrelated charge of felony false imprisonment for holding a victim against their will.
When I saw that, I immediately just started crying.
Melodee's father died in a car crash when she was just 6 months old. It's not stopped his family from helping search for the little girl.
For me, any type of arrest means that she did something bad, because they're not going to arrest her for nothing.
Ashley Buzzard's arrest comes exactly 1 month after she was seen in this security footage alongside her daughter, renting a car before authorities say they traveled 1,500 miles, at one point switching out the license plates and wearing wigs and hoods to avoid detection.
Went as far out as Nebraska, down into Kansas before returning to Lompoc without Melodee.
The community seen putting up signs outside of Ashley's home.
Just maybe this most recent arrest can get some leverage over her, and she starts disclosing where Melodee is.
Former federal prosecutor Nima Romani calls her arrest an important next step, especially since Ashley has not been helping authorities find her daughter.
And you see parents, or in this case a mother, that isn't acting like one typically would when their child is missing and not accounted for. That raises all sorts of red flags.
Investigators calling the case unusual.
This one definitely does stand out. This is a standout case for us.
As Melodee's family hopes Ashley will have the answers they need to bring her home safely.
You try to stay positive, but then you also have to mentally prepare yourself.
So authorities say they cannot give any further details about the false imprisonment charge, saying they have to protect the ongoing investigation, but wouldn't specify what investigation exactly they were talking.
All right, so real quick, obviously we know a little bit more about that now. And then, while officially unrelated to Melodee's disappearance, the arrest serves multiple investigative purposes. It keeps Ashley in custody where she can be questioned, allows for mental health evaluations, I wanted to put that in there, and demonstrates to her the serious legal jeopardy she faces. Pressure that investigators hope might eventually break through her refusal to cooperate regarding Melodee's location. Real quick, before I give Russ this question, I want to show you Facebook, because he did put a post out. Let me show you who this guy is real quick. Let me go here. Hey, Russ, tell me if you can see what I'm doing. Can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's up.
All right, so the first thing I want to do is go to his page. Can you still see it? Me clicking over?
Yep, there he is.
All right, that's him. That's Tyler Brewer. Let me go to his page. I want to show. He changed it. He changed it. He freaking changed it. He went back to an older picture. Okay, guys, I wanted to show you something. Well, it's still there technically. So he went and visited Ashley, I believe, on November 6th. But then later on, around 10:59 p.m., November 6th, if you watch my older video that I just did today, he posted up all his contact information. It was like as if he knew he would get attention from this. I felt. And then that was kind of me dissecting it in the moment. He did. Oh, did he remove it? Or no? hold on a second. I have a feeling he may have made his page a bit more private. It was more open before, but now I only have these posts. So he could have, maybe he saw my video. Hold on a second, guys. Because I can't see everything anymore. It's not as open to me anymore. Looks like I'm seeing older things. So guys, you have to do me a favor. Check out my older video, the one I just did. And towards the end, this is not what his page looked like this morning. But I want to show you one other thing. Because I was concerned that he was chasing clout. And I made it known on there. So if he watched the video, which I'm sure he's trying to keep up with what people are saying, there's a good chance he could have reacted. Or maybe not just to my video, but other people that are saying that. But the one thing I noticed right away was he said he didn't want to make get on the scene, but then he changed his thing that day with all his information, and then he tells somebody that he'll talk to the Daily Mail. But I wanted to show you something real quick. In search of Melodee. So I want to read this lady's comment right here. In a comment not his post, I said, this is about Tyler. I said I was going to report Tyler to the courts and he blocked me. That should be very telling to you people. Take him with a lying grain of salt. He got into her house on false pretenses. This is what they're saying. As a process server, we don't have badges. So on one of the original quotes, guys, on one of his original comments, he talked about all these different labels. He never once mentioned that he was her friend in the post he put up. He put down that he was a mandated reporter, stuff that were related to the court, which, you know, like what the hell are you doing going to her house for? What the hell are you doing going inside the house? What about if now she changed her whole plan? You said that she disclosed something to you. Now, how do we know she hasn't changed what she's done because she gave you information that you really shouldn't have been asking for? But either way, this lady says, as a process server, we don't have badges. Let me show you a picture of this real quick, just so we're on the same page. When he went to her house, he was looking like this with a badge around his shirt. He reminds me of SF Investigates, to be honest with you. In California, you need to be certified to be a paralegal. He doesn't appear to be. Paralegals nor legal document assistants, these are uncertified people who just sign up with the clerk and pay like a $50 fee, are in no way investigators. Take it as a law student about to take her MPRE, but he's holding himself out as a firm, the Brewer firm, as if he has any connection with the law. He's doing this for clout, clearly. Do not insert yourself into this investigation. If you hear something, tell the appropriate channels. Do not play police like it's some movie. It's a kid's life. And as to why I'm here, pretty much because it hits close to home, because we have the same name, and it made my mom cry because she looks like how I looked when I was little. So I like to see progress. Also, from a legal perspective, it's wild to see what can and cannot be done at this stage. So I actually, before I even read that, I thought the same thing. I thought he was getting himself involved. Sorry about that. I may have missed that. Thought he was getting himself involved where he shouldn't be getting involved. And that could have caused a concern. He goes into the home. Now she discloses something, and now she has to protect it. So how do we know that she hasn't made a plan? So even if he knew where she was, it could have put her at risk. So Russ, Brewers and Cal introduces a critical piece of information. Ashley's claim that she left Melodee with someone specific in Utah, based on what Brewer said. This could represent the key to finding Melodee alive, or it could be the delusional fabrication of a woman in profound psychological distress. How should investigators weigh this tip against the backdrop of Ashley's deteriorating mental state and proving willingness to deceive, if this is the truth?
Well, they should definitely be asking him, and they should be running down everything that they can about that particular lead. The problem is right, with a delusion like that, could she be lying? Yes, she could also be telling the truth. She could also not know the difference between reality and her delusion. So I guess a delusion by any other name would obviously, be a delusion. But so there's all of those things. So I think that, it just has to be one of those things, is they have to go back to that route. They should be, pounding along it and, putting up flyers and anything else, because somewhere along that route, the truth, exists. That doesn't mean that she's along that route. Someone could have, taken her from Ashley in a manner that they calculated, in a predatory way. So they don't want that, coming back to them. But, the other alternative is pretty grim. I also believe it's the most likely is that, something happened and that she may have done something to the child. Let's just put it that way. Don't want to think about that. Always want to, hope for the best. But I think it has to be looked at with regards to trying uncovering that one thing. I would like to see them. Of course, we don't know that they haven't done this, obviously. I would like them to try and expend a little bit more capital on that last sighting with the purple-haired woman/female that we know of that happened, because that would at least give an indicator. I don't know if they could recover any video from there. I don't know if they could, try and get a better description. It may be that, that they've already exhausted everything. We're kind of Monday morning quarterbacking things a little bit, but still hoping for the best.
Yeah, my biggest worry is that he could have altered her plan. I mean, if I was the police, I'd be very upset. Like, what are you doing talking to the star witness of a missing girl? Who gave you the authority to go in and mess with an active investigation? All right, so now part 5, understanding Ashley's mental health motive and the psychology of maternal harm. This is a big part of Russ's research. So to understand what might have happened in Melodee, we must examine Ashley Buzzard's psychological state and the rare but documented phenomenon of mothers who harm their children. So guys, this part is not for the easy listening. So Ashley's documented mental health crisis. So the evidence of Ashley's psychological struggles is substantial and long-standing. So in 2021, we had psychiatric hospitalization. Ashley required inpatient treatment for several weeks, serious enough that she temporarily lost custody of Melodee during this period. And that's when it was given to the, well, they put it down as the paternal grandmother's son. I think it's the uncle, would be Melodee's uncle. Family history. Relatives have described mental illness as running in Ashley's family, with her being characterized as bipolar and mentally unstable. Progressive paranoia. By 2025, multiple witnesses describe Ashley as exhibiting extreme paranoid behavior, believing people were tracking her, covering her laptop camera, and seeing conspiracies where none existed. And the Brewer incident, her behavior on November 6th, disoriented, wielding a weapon, making irrational accusations, physically imprisoning someone, demonstrating severe psychological decomposition. So if you look at all this in context, she may really believe that someone's after her and she's going to protect her daughter. But then the problem is with this belief is, why not stay out there with her daughter? Unless a lot of people that face mental health concerns like this believe that there's a chip or something inside them that they can't avoid. So maybe she separates her daughter and then she goes back to regular life because whoever's watching her will think that nothing's wrong because she's there. So maybe she does want to separate because maybe in her mind, she could have a chip or something that keeps her monitored. Hypothetically, I've seen it a lot. So Ashley's own mother reportedly stated that Ashley needed to be put in a hospital and had become a different person since her father's death, exhibiting severe paranoia. One detective involved in that case called it the most drastic situation he's seen. Noting that things only get worse if you don't get help. Now, here's the paradox of isolation as protection. Ashley's pattern of isolating Melodee, cutting off paternal family, avoiding school oversight, keeping the child essentially invisible to mandated reporters, reveals a deeply distorted sense of what constitutes protection. To Ashley, the outside world represented threat. The paternal family was viewed as attempting to steal Melodee away. Schools and authorities represented the system that had nearly taken her daughter in 2021, and any outside contact risked exposure of her parenting situation and mental state. This isolation served Ashley's need for control, but left Melodee completely dependent on and vulnerable to her mother's deteriorating judgment. That's what Russ said about the car, being next to her in the car. I mean, she's decompensating. When a parent's protective instincts become pathological, the very actions meant to shield a child can become the mechanism of harm. That's what Russ touched on. The psychological context when mothers kill. Okay, guys, grant me. This is not an easy read or listen, but it could be part of the story. So while exceedingly rare compared to paternal violence against children, maternal filicide does occur, and research has identified consistent patterns. Typology of maternal filicide. Drawing on psychiatrist Philip Resnick's seminal 1969 work, researchers identify 5 main categories of maternal filicide. One, you have the altruistic. The mother believes killing the child is in the child's best interest to spare suffering or protect from a perceived threat, often overlap with psychosis. Then you have the acutely psychotic, driven by hallucinations or delusions without rational motive, such as hearing voices commanding the act or believing the child is possessed. Then you have unwanted child. The child is seen as a burden or obstacle, typically seen in younger mothers or neonaticide. Unlikely in Ashley's case, given her fierce attachment to Melanie. I mentioned that. And fetal maltreatment. So for fatal maltreatment, that's unintentional death resulting from abuse or neglect, such as excessive discipline or Munchausen by proxy. And then you have spousal revenge, killing the child to hurt the other parent, typically in custody battles or after betrayal. In Ashley's case, if harm came to Melodee, it would most likely fall into the altruistic psychotic categories. And Russ had mentioned that. I also see some of that too. A mother who convinced herself that drastic action was necessary to save her child from some imagined threat. Then you have the female family annihilators. Key differences. Research indicates that female family annihilators, that word's tough, though rare, differ from their male counterparts in important ways. One, they're less likely to include spouse in the violence, often no spouse present, more likely to have mental health issues or histories of victimization themselves, motivated by perceived loss of custody rather than financial shame or anger at partner, altruistic framing, more common than revenge or control motives, and more likely premeditated rather than explosive or spontaneous. One study in homicide studies found that women who commit familicide typically have substantive, substantiated, but differences in motivation from men with mental illness and perceived custody threats as, so let's read that again. One study in homicide studies found that women who commit familicide typically have substantiated differences in motivation. So from men with mental illness and perceived custody threats as primary drivers. The paranoid protector profile, researchers Yardley, Wilson, and Lines developed a taxonomy of family annihilators that included a paranoid type, someone who kills family members believing they're protecting them from a greater imagined threat. This profile appears to fit Ashley's situation closely. Deep-seated paranoid beliefs about external threats, distorted perception of danger to the child, conviction that drastic action is necessary to save the family member, and actions taken from a warped sense of love rather than anger. Forensic psychologist N.G. Burrell explains that psychotic family annihilators become delusional and believe that killing is a way of sparing their children from some horrific event that they imagine might occur. They may think there's some satanic force or receive divine messages. This description is chillingly applicable if we suppose Ashley was in such a state, her documented paranoia could have escalated to delusions that Melodee needed to be saved from a fate she imagined was worse than death. Maybe Ashley was hearing voices too. And maybe she was trying to protect her daughter from who she thought she could become. Ashley's possible motivation. Several interrelated factors likely drove Ashley's actions in October of 2025. Fear of custody loss. Having nearly lost Melodee once in 2021, Ashley lived with the terror of it happening again. The school involvement and impending welfare checks may have triggered this primal fear. If I can't have her, no one will. We talked about that. Paranoid delusion. Ashley appears to have genuinely believed she and Melodee were being pursued or threatened by nebulous forces, family members, government authorities, or other perceived enemies. In her distorted reality, fleeing was rational. Financial and life stressors. Mounting debt, social isolation, the trauma of her partner's death years earlier, and lack of support systems created a pressure cooker environment. Research consistently shows that such stressors combined with mental illness heighten risk of family violence. Distorted sense of protection. Ashley may have convinced herself that whatever action she took, whether hiding Melodee or something worse, was an act of love. In her mind, she alone could truly protect her daughter. And the mercy killing possibility that me and Russ have touched on. In the worst case scenario, Ashley might have killed Melodee under the delusion that it was the only way to save her from whatever imagined horror she believed was coming. This altruistic filicide phenomenon, while rare, matches several elements of Ashley's profile. Okay, sorry guys, Russ had to step out for a second, so I'll continue reading through. So was Ashley trying to protect Melodee, or was she completely delusional? The evidence suggests both. She believes she was protecting her daughter, but that belief was itself a product of severe mental illness, divorced from reality. This distinction matters for understanding motive, but doesn't change the tragic outcome for Melodee. That's what the scarier part is for me. I don't understand how she's seeing the world at this point. So the concern could be she could have that ultimate breakdown, even though she believes she's acting in the child's best interest. So you may have a mother that's willing to protect her child, but at this point, we have to wonder, what does protection really mean? So where are we now? Scenarios and possibilities. So as of late November of 2025, Melodee Buzzard had been missing for over a month and a half. Ashley remains in custody on the false imprisonment charge, still refusing to provide verifiable information about her daughter's fate. Now, there's going to be an update on that on Wednesday with that charge. I think that's her arraignment. The investigation continues across multiple states with the FBI and local authorities pursuing every lead. But what actually happened to Melodee? So I got a few scenarios here, some scenario analysis, and this is from most to least likely. So we'll start with the most. Intentional concealment with a third party. Figure about that 40% likelihood. In this scenario, Ashley did what she hinted to Tyler Brewer. She left Melodee in the care of someone she trusted, believing this would protect her daughter from imagined threats. Her behavior through October 9th, disguises, remote travel, license plate swap, was geared towards getting Melodee to a safe location out of reach of perceived enemies. What are the supporting factors for this? Brewer's account that Ashley identified a specific person and location in Utah. No physical evidence of violence discovered. Ashley's pattern of protection, progressiveness rather than aggression towards Melodee. The elaborate planning suggests a goal of concealment, not immediate harm, and law enforcement's continued focus on recovery rather than homicide investigation. This remains the most hopeful scenario. If Melodee is alive with someone, that person either doesn't understand the severity of the situation or fears legal consequences of coming forward. Ashley's continued silence might indicate she still believes revealing anything will endanger Melodee. Scenario 2 is altruistic filicide, psychotic mercy killing, and this is 35%. It's high. Only because she could be at that final end, or when she was doing the drive, she could have been at that final end of whatever the psychotic break would be. And maybe she did it, and as she returned back, she's a bit calmer because she completed an act. But I had to put this high. This scenario assumes Ashley's in a psychotic break, killed Melodee during the trip, convinced she was sparing her child from a fate worse than death. On October 9th or 10th, traversing the remote areas of Utah, Colorado, Ashley's delusion peaked, and she acted on a distorted belief that death was the only way to protect Melodee. Supporting factors, Ashley's severe mental deterioration and documented paranoid psychosis. The profile match to paranoid protector, type family annihilator. Remote locations along the route where evidence could be concealed. Ashley's refusal to provide any reassurance about Melodee's safety. The duration of time with no contact or sighting. And forensic examinations of her home suggesting investigators considered violence as a possibility. This scenario is tragically consistent with many elements of the case, though the lack of confirmed physical evidence of harm keeps it from being the definitive conclusion. So, guys, Russ had to step away, so I'll finish the rest of the show. So, again, if you guys like what we covered for us, we do have the buy me a cup of coffee for both of us. It's in the description or on top of my page for myself. Mine's in the description as well, right above Russ. So to get to Russ, you have to go further down. So scenario 3, a little less, is accidental death with panic cover-up. That's about 15%. Melodee could have died accidentally during the journey, a medical emergency, fall, or unreported vehicle accident. Ashley, in her unstable state and fear of blame, decided to conceal her death rather than report it. Her elaborate evasion tactics could have been attempts to avoid detection while dealing with this tragedy. This scenario is less likely, mainly because there's no evidence of any accident or known health vulnerability that Melodee had. It also doesn't fully explain the extensive pre-trip planning with disguises and false plates. However, if true, Ashley's complete silence could stem from guilt and fear of prosecution, with her statement to Brewer being a fabricated story to avoid admitting what really happened. Scenario 4, underground network, fringe group placement, estimated 10% likelihood. A more exotic possibility is that Ashley connected with some form of underground community, perhaps through online forums or past contacts that agreed with her anti-establishment fears and took Melodee in. This could be an off-the-grid living community, radical religious group, or other insular networks that believe they're protecting Melodee from the outside world. Some even thought the Amish country out in Utah. Is it the Amish? Is it the Amish? I know they have, or is it Mormon? They have some isolated groups out there. Supporting factors: Ashley's anti-authority mindset and distrust of government, the purple-haired woman sighting in Green River suggesting possible accomplice, private investigator speculation about coordinated handoff, and Ashley's specific claim to Brewer about leaving Melodee with someone. This scenario essentially extends the intentional concealment theory, but involves multiple people actively hiding a known missing child from the FBI, a serious federal crime few groups would risk. No evidence of such a network has emerged, making this speculative but not impossible. All right, there's a lot here. The evidence balance, so we have hope and fear. So reason for hope: there's no confirmed physical evidence of violence or death. Brewer's account of a specific Utah caregiver claim. Law enforcement still in active recovery mode. Ashley's deep attachment to Melodee suggests she wouldn't easily harm her. And last confirmed sighting showed Melodee's apparently unharmed. Reason for concern: over a month with no contact sightings or verification of safety. Ashley's complete refusal to cooperate or provide reassurance. Severe mental deterioration consistent with psychotic break. Remote locations along the route ideal for concealment of evidence. And pattern matching to document cases of maternal filicide. Or pattern matching to documented cases of maternal filicide, mountain life stressors, and paranoia that preceded the disappearance. So what's the current status and next steps? Ashley Buzzard remains in custody with bail set at $100,000 on the false imprisonment charge. She has pleaded not guilty and continues to refuse cooperation regarding Melodee's whereabouts. Investigators are pursuing multiple avenues. Active investigation efforts. We got reviewing thousands of hours of surveillance footage from gas stations, traffic cameras, and businesses across 6 states. Interviewing anyone who had contact with Ashley in the years, months, and days before the disappearance. Conducting searches of remote areas along the October 9th route, particularly in Utah and Colorado, because that's where they believe that last sighting was. Analyzing digital forensics from phones, computers, and the rental vehicle system. Following up on Brewer's tips about a specific person or location in Utah. They got to put some pressure on him. And appealing to the public in communities along the route for any information. Now, mind you, he went private on his social media, it looks like, or at least cut me off. The leverage of custody. Ashley's arrest on the false imprisonment charge, while not directly related to Melodee's disappearance, provides investigators with several strategic advantages. She is now in a controlled environment where she can be monitored, evaluated, and potentially treated for her mental health issues. Prosecutors may use the current charge as leverage to encourage cooperation on Melodee's case. Additionally, being in custody allows for court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, which might stabilize her enough to provide truthful information or at least give experts insight into her mental state during the October trip. So maybe once they stabilize her with medication, we'll get a little more information, and then hopefully that could make its way into law enforcement. So family and community response. Melodee's paternal relatives have been vocal advocates for the search, holding vigils and speaking to the media. They've expressed both their long-held concerns about Ashley's mental state and their desperate hope that Melodee might still be found alive. The community has rallied with searches, posted flyers, and maintained attention on the case. Private investigator Bill Garcia has joined the effort, bringing additional resources and expertise to tracking Ashley's movements during those critical days. And the critical window time is both enemy and potential ally in this case. Each day that passes without finding Melodee alive statistically decreases the likelihood of a positive outcome. However, time in custody may also work on Ashley. The isolation, legal pressure, and potential mental health treatment could eventually break through her defense, or her defenses. Investigators are prepared for a long effort, recognizing that some missing person cases take months or even years to resolve, particularly when the primary suspect refuses to cooperate. What's the path forward? If Melodee is alive and hidden, the breakthrough will likely come from one of several sources. Someone who knows where she is coming forward, either voluntarily or under pressure. Digital forensics revealing communication or searches that point to her location. A tip from the public identifying the person Ashley may have left her with. And Ashley herself finally providing truthful information, possibly after mental health intervention. If Melodee has been killed, the resolution will depend on physical evidence that has been collected, yielding results, witnesses along the route coming forward with crucial observations, searches of remote areas eventually locating remains, and Ashley's eventual confession or inadvertent disclosure of what happened. Legal considerations. Prosecutors face the challenge of potentially charging Ashley in connection with Melodee's disappearance without a body or confession. While such prosecutions are difficult, they're not unprecedented. I mean, we saw that with Emmanuel Harrow's case. The circumstantial evidence is substantial. The disguises, the license plate swap, the mysterious trip, the return without the child, the refusal to explain, and the pattern of behavior consistent with someone concealing a crime. If physical evidence emerges, blood, DNA, forensic traces in the vehicle or home, the case becomes significantly stronger. California law allows for charges of murder, kidnapping, or child endangerment, even without recovering a victim's body, provided the circumstantial evidence is sufficient to prove the crime beyond reasonable doubt. Again, the Emanuel Harrell case. Cases have been successfully prosecuted on defendants' contradictory or false statements, evidence of planning and concealment, forensic evidence showing violence occurred, complete absence of the alleged victim despite exhaustive searches, and defendant's consciousness of guilt through evasive behavior. Ashley's actions tick many of these boxes, or check many of these boxes. The question is whether prosecutors believe they have enough or whether they're waiting for additional evidence or a confession. So I want to talk about the system failures, the lessons we need to learn here. This is important. Melodee Buzzard's case illuminates troubling gaps in child welfare oversight. Despite multiple red flags, psychiatric hospitalization requiring custody transfer, illegal homeschooling with no state filling, progressive isolation from family, or filing, illegal homeschooling with no state filing, progressive isolation from family, apparent periods of residential instability, and financial collapse. No intervention occurred until it was too late. Where the system failed, homeschool oversight, right? California requires homeschooling families to file with the state, yet actually operated for years without doing so. No mechanism caught this violation or ensured Melodee was receiving education or having her welfare checked. Post-hospitalization monitoring. After Ashley's 2021 psychiatric hospitalization and the custody dispute it triggered, no ongoing monitoring was mandated when Melodee was returned to her care. The very concern that led to temporary custody loss were simply left unaddressed. Lack of mandated reporter contact. By isolating Melodee from school, medical care, and family, Ashley ensured no teachers, doctors, counselors, or other professionals who are legally required to report suspected abuse or neglect ever had access to the child. A 9-year-old should not be able to disappear from all the institutional contact for years. We saw this with Jacqueline Torres, Mimi. Financial distress indicators. While not traditionally considered a child welfare issue, Ashley's mounting financial problems, bankruptcy, multiple lawsuits, apparent housing instability, combined with mental health concerns, should have triggered some form of welfare check, particularly for a single mother with no support system. And the delayed school response. Even when Melodee enrolled in independent study in August of 2025, it took until mid-October for the school to escalate to a law enforcement welfare check. While the school followed its policies, one wonders if earlier, more aggressive intervention might have prevented what followed. I mean, instead of having a time frame, they have exhausted effort. What does that mean? There should be a time frame, and then the exhaustive effort should be done within that time frame. But the time frame is important to me because an exhausted effort, what does that mean? Is there parameters of time in there? What could have been different? A more robust system might have included mandatory periodic welfare checks for children being homeschooled, especially where no state filing exists. Require follow-up after psychiatric hospitalization when children are in the home. Cross-referencing systems that flag when children disappear from all institutional contact. So no school records, no medical visits, no documented presence anywhere. Lower thresholds for wellness checks when families show multiple risk factors. And better coordination between family, courts, mental health systems, schools, and child protective services. The tragedy is that Melodee's situation was knowable. People were concerned, but the concerns never translated into action that could have protected her. And then you got the challenge of parental rights versus child safety. I did a whole show on this, but just to revisit shortly, but I did a whole show on this. A good amount was covered on this, but just to revisit shortly. Ashley's case also highlights the perpetual tension between respecting parental rights and ensuring child safety. Even parents with documented mental illness have constitutional rights to raise their children. Even financial instability or social isolation doesn't automatically warrant state intervention. Even keeping a child out of traditional school is legal in many circumstances. The question becomes, at what point do warning signs collectively justify overriding parental autonomy? How much evidence of risk is enough? Melodee's case suggests our current thresholds may be too high, waiting for actual evidence of harm rather than acting on patterns that predict it. Yet lowering those thresholds risks government overreach into families who, despite struggles, are doing their best. It's very complex because somewhere along the line where the resolution is that there's also preventive measures, but right now we're just reacting. So again, you have to find out the balance, parental rights and child safety. And it looks like child safety should be held a bit higher. You know, I rather someone be wrong and at least make an effort, as opposed to being right and not making the effort. But prevention kind of lies sometimes in ambiguity, just a feeling that you cannot justify, but just a feeling. And when we're too afraid to act on it, this is what happens. That's not an easy balance, but cases like Melodee, where multiple red flags were visible for years, suggest we're erring too far on the side of non-intervention, particularly when mental illness is a factor. And again, when you're removing your child from any type of mandated reporting system, it should require more oversight, only because this is where the abuse, neglect, the killings, this is where they hide. So I'm sorry, if you're going to remove it, then we have to be a little bit more closer to the ground with you guys. I hope you're aware of that. And really not about the curriculum, just more about the safety, because when you move this out of the way, you also remove our efforts to make sure the child is safe. Throughout this analysis, we've examined Ashley's mental health trauma history, and possible motivations not to excuse. Throughout this analysis, we've examined Ashley's mental health, trauma history, and possible motivations not to excuse her actions, but to understand them. If Ashley harmed Melodee or continues to prevent her recovery, those are crimes for which she must be held accountable. But mental illness may explain behavior, but it doesn't absolve responsibility, particularly when that behavior harms a vulnerable child. Yet understanding the psychology helps in several ways. It aids investigators in predicting where Ashley might have gone or what she might have done. It informs strategies for getting her to disclose information. It provides context for families and communities struggling to comprehend how a mother could do this, and helps identify warning signs in other cases before they reach crisis. And by the way, this guy, Brewer, wasn't a mental health professional either. Shouldn't have been approaching her. You know, if you think she's having a mental health breakdown, then, you know, you got to have the right professional to try to talk to her, because I believe you could have made matters worse. And, you know, you really could have made matters worse. Ashley Buzzard appears to have been a woman whose mental illness progressively worsened, whose support systems eroded or were pushed away, whose fears and paranoia expanded to consume her reality, and who ultimately took actions that have devastated her daughter. She may have believed she was protecting Melodee even as she harmed her. And that tragic irony, love twisted into something unrecognizable by disease, is at the heart of many family violence cases. The funny thing is, if she has a mental health concern and the jail sees it and they can diagnose something, then maybe there's something they can do later when the recovery of the child, if they go to release her. It's like, well, child can't be in your care, so now we need to know what the child is, because now you've been deemed mentally unfit. So maybe there could be something here that we could work on to push for a little something more. The public's role. Cases like Melodee's depend heavily on public assistance. Someone along that October 7th to the 10th route may have seen something crucial without realizing its importance. So a distressed child at a gas station, a vehicle parked in an unusual location, a woman acting strangely or appearing to transfer a child to another person, or unusual activity at a remote property or location. The surveillance footage investigators have represent only a fraction of potential witnesses. Human memory and observation fill critical gaps. Anyone who was in Utah, Colorado, Kansas, Nevada, or Arizona during these days and saw the white Chevrolet Malibu with either California plates 9MNG101 or New York plates HCG 9677, or who saw Ashley and or Melodee, could hold the key to this case. Beyond this specific case, the public plays a role in community vigilance. Neighbors, teachers, family members, friends, these are the people who notice when a child disappears from view, when a parent's behavior becomes concerning, when isolation becomes dangerous. Speaking up even when the uncertain can save lives. The hesitation to get involved or interfere in others' parenting can have lethal consequences for children who have no voice or power to protect themselves. So what's the conclusion here? And this is the end. And I'll give you one last question to think on. All right, let me get to the conclusion. Sorry, guys. Just want to pass it for a second. Here it goes. As of this writing, Melodee Buzzard's fate remains unknown. She has been missing for over 40 days. Her mother sits in jail, silent. Investigators work around the clock, pursuing leads across a 1,000-mile corridor. Family members hold on to hope while preparing for the worst. And somewhere, alive or deceased, hidden or lost, a 9-year-old girl represents every parent's nightmare and every child's advocate's worst-case scenario. This case holds two possible narratives, and we won't know which is true until Melodee is found or Ashley speaks. The hopeful narrative, Melodee is alive, hidden with someone Ashley trusted in a misguided attempt to protect her from imagined threats. In this version, mental illness drove Ashley to extreme measures, but maternal love, however distorted, prevented ultimate harm. Melodee may not even fully understand she's missing, believing instead the story Ashley told her about why they had to hide. When found, she'll be traumatized but recoverable. This narrative allows for healing, for reunion with family, for intervention and therapy that can help a child recover from an ordeal. The tragic narrative: Melodee died during the October trip, victim of her mother's psychotic break and paranoid delusions. In Ashley's deteriorated mental state, she convinced herself that death was preferable to whatever fate she imagined for her daughter: separation, foster care, life without her mother, or more nebulous threats. Ashley then concealed what she had done in the remote wilderness where Melodee may never be found. This narrative offers no comfort except eventual closure and justice. The most likely reality, based on the totality of evidence, my assessment leans towards the intentional concealment scenario 1, though not with certainty. Ashley's specific claim to Brewer about leaving Melodee with someone, the lack of physical evidence of violence, and the elaborate planning that suggests a goal of hiding rather than immediate harm all point towards Melodee having been placed somewhere or with someone. However, the severe concern is that even if this was Ashley's intention, her judgment was so impaired that she may have left Melodee in an unsafe situation, or her account may be a delusional fabrication covering a darker truth. The psychological profile strongly suggests that if harm came to Melodee, it emerged from Ashley's paranoid psychosis rather than calculated malice. This was not a mother who hated her child, but by all accounts, she loved Melodee fiercely, perhaps too fiercely. But love corrupted by mental illness can be as deadly as hate. So what happens next? The investigation will continue. Every rock along that route, every digital trace, every witness will be pursued. Ashley will face pressure from prosecutors, investigators, and potentially her own psychological decline in custody. At some point, days, weeks, months, or even years from now, the truth will likely emerge. Most cases eventually do, through confession, discovery, or the slow accumulation of evidence that finally reaches critical mass. For Melodee's family, the wait is agonizing. For investigators, it's frustrating but familiar. And many missing person cases require patience and persistence. For Ashley, if she has any awareness at all of the harm she's caused, the silence must be its own prison. And the final reflection: Melodee Buzzard should be in 4th grade right now. She should be complaining about homework, playing with friends, watching cartoons, experience the mundane joys and frustrations of childhood. Instead, her name is on a missing persons poster across 6 states. Her face stares out from news broadcasts and social media shares. Strangers debate what happened to her, analyze her mother's psychology, and search terrain they've never seen for a child they never met. This is what happens when systems fail, when mental illness goes untreated, and when isolation turns toxic, and when a vulnerable child's only protector becomes her greatest threat. Melodee's case should haunt us collectively, not just as a mystery to solve, but as a preventable tragedy that indicts every gap that allowed her to slip through. Wherever Melodee is, she deserves to be found. Whatever happened to her, the truth deserves to emerge. And however this resolves, the lessons must be learned so that the next Melodee, and there will be others unless things change, can be saved in time. So again, anyone with information about Melodee Buzzard, Ashley Buzzard, or their whereabouts during October 7th to the 10th, 2025, is urged to contact. But let me give you her pictures again. Sorry, for some reason the picture came off my thing. So let me just show you Melodee's picture again. I have it right here. Hold on, guys. Came out wrong. Melodee. There's this beautiful little girl. There she is. Have we seen her? Her last appearance, she's a little bit taller. Let me show you how she looked in her last appearance that we know of. And it's a little bit of a rough look, but this is all we got. So again, if you have seen this girl, you can contact Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, 805-681-4150, FBI tips. So you got tips.fbi.gov or 1-800-CALL-FBI or anonymous tip line, local tip line number. So the question that haunts this case: was October 7th to the 10th, 2025 a mother's desperate attempt to save her daughter from imagined threat? Or was it the window in which paranoid delusion transformed protection into destruction? Until Melodee is found or Ashley breaks her silence, we remain suspended between hope and horror, unable to know which version of this story is true. So always, guys, if you like the content, please, make sure you subscribe, you like, you engage. I love the comments. It builds good dialogue. It's all about asking the right questions, and feel free to buy me a cup of coffee. As always, guys, stay safe.